Let me start tonight with something I honestly never expected to see. Not in my lifetime. Not in modern American politics. Because what happened just hours ago is the kind of moment that constitutional scholars spend decades studying, but almost never actually witness. 38 senior military leaders, both active duty and retired, including 7 four-star generals, have released a joint public statement. And in that statement, they are doing something the American military almost never does. They are publicly challenging the conduct of the commander-in-chief. Now pause for a second and really think about that. These are people whose entire professional identity is built around a single principle. The military follows civilian leadership, always. That principle is one of the foundations of American democracy. And yet tonight, a group of the most senior military figures in the country has decided that remaining silent is no longer an option. So the question becomes obvious. What could possibly push career officers, people who have spent 30 or 40 years avoiding political conflict, to take a step this dramatic? To understand that, we have to go back a little. Because according to multiple reports coming out of Washington tonight, what these officers describe is not one single event, not one heated disagreement, but what they say is a pattern inside the military command structure that has been building for months. Several senior officials say promotion decisions began quietly factoring in perceived political loyalty. Operational briefings were reportedly reshaped. And in some cases, commanders whose assessments contradicted political messaging suddenly found themselves excluded from key discussions. Now, disagreements between military leaders and presidents are nothing new. That has happened many times before in American history. But those disagreements usually stay behind closed doors. They happen quietly, and they are handled within the system, which brings us to the moment that appears to have changed everything. According to the letter released today, a directive was issued on February 9th. That directive allegedly instructed the Pentagon to temporarily hold authorization requests from 3 forward operating bases overseas. In other words, operational support, equipment approvals, resupply logistics, all placed on hold. When a senior Pentagon official reportedly asked why these authorizations were being delayed, the explanation they received stunned many legal experts. They were told that certain commanders needed to demonstrate a better understanding of the administration's priorities before operational support could move forward. Let me repeat that. Military authorizations affecting troops in the field allegedly conditioned on whether commanders showed sufficient alignment with political leadership. And then something even stranger reportedly happened. Just hours later, those same base commanders received invitations from a White House political advisor. The invitation? Appear on a televised policy roundtable praising administration defense policies. If that account is accurate, the message was hard to miss. Appear, show support, and the authorizations move forward. Decline, and your troops keep waiting. Now, if that sounds extraordinary, that's because historically it would be. The American military has spent generations trying to avoid exactly this kind of political entanglement. To see why, we need to rewind a few decades, back to 1951 during the Korean War. General Douglas MacArthur, one of the most famous military leaders in American history, openly disagreed with President Harry Truman about expanding the war into China. MacArthur had enormous public support, but Truman removed him from command. And the reason Truman gave was simple. Civilian leadership must control the military. MacArthur ultimately accepted that decision because the principle mattered more than any one individual. Fast forward to 1993. General Colin Powell, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, strongly disagreed with President Bill Clinton's policy regarding gay service members. Powell expressed concerns. He testified before Congress, but after that he carried out the policy because once the decision was made, the military followed civilian authority. And then in 2019, Defense Secretary James Mattis resigned after disagreements with President Trump over Syria. Mattis wrote a letter that was widely seen as a criticism of the president's strategy. But even then, Mattis avoided publicly attacking the president while he was still in office. That's the tradition. That's the line, which is why what happened today is so remarkable. Because these 38 leaders did not wait years. They did not quietly retire and then speak. They stood together and delivered a public statement on camera at the National Press Club in Washington. and the words they used were unusually direct. One retired four-star general said this: "We have served under presidents from both parties, and we have never publicly questioned civilian leadership. But we cannot remain silent when operational decisions affecting the safety of American service members are subordinated to political calculations." And then came the sentence that has already begun circulating widely among constitutional scholars. The principle of civilian control of the military is sacred, but that control carries a responsibility to act in the national interest, not personal interest. That distinction matters, because these officers are not rejecting civilian control. They are arguing something very different. They are saying that what they witnessed was not civilian leadership, but civilian exploitation of the military. And that brings us to the part of this story that turns it from a political controversy into something much more serious. According to one of the commanders speaking today, one of the 3 bases affected by the delayed authorization was later subjected to increased hostile fire. About 48 hours after the directive, 3 American service members were wounded. Now, to be very clear, there is no confirmed evidence that the authorization delay directly caused that attack. But the base commander had requested additional defensive systems that were part of the delayed authorization package. Those systems were not in place when the attack occurred, which raises a question that is now spreading through Washington tonight. Were troops potentially exposed to greater risk because of political pressure? That question is now at the center of a growing investigation. Earlier today, the Senate Armed Services Committee voted in a bipartisan session to request an immediate investigation by the Pentagon's Inspector General. If that investigation proceeds, it will attempt to determine several things. Did the February 9 directive actually exist? Who issued it? What exactly did it say? And what operational consequences followed? If investigators confirm the account presented by these military leaders, the implications would be enormous, because it would suggest that military readiness was used as leverage for political messaging. But there is another possible path here, and that is the path of escalation. So far, the official response from the White House has not addressed the specific allegations. Instead, the response focused largely on personal criticism of the generals who signed the letter. That kind of response tends to deepen institutional conflicts rather than resolve them. And the longer this story continues without clear answers, the more questions it raises about the relationship between political leadership and the armed forces. The truth is, moments like this are extremely rare. The American system has weathered civil-military tensions before, through Vietnam, through Iraq, through multiple political crises. But the strength of that system has always depended on one basic agreement. The military serves the Constitution, not a political party, not an individual president, and not a media narrative. Whether that principle is being tested now is exactly what investigators and historians will be trying to determine in the weeks ahead. Because if the allegations made today are substantiated, this could become one of the most significant civil-military confrontations in modern American history. And if they are not substantiated, the consequences for public trust in both the military and political leadership could still be profound. Either way, the story that began today is far from over. In fact, it may just be getting started. And the answer to what happens next will likely shape the future relationship between American presidents and the military they command.